Hey everybody, and welcome back to another video. So it is the summertime, and of course this is the time of the year when you want to make sure your tank doesn't get too hot. Now typically here in Vermont I don't have to worry about that issue, but when I added my new 225 gallon Peninsula tank, things changed. So what I want to do in this video is take you through the issues that came up and what I did to help resolve them. So let's get to it. All right, so this 187 gallon system was set up about 6 years ago, and it's, for those of you that don't know, I've got it plumbed through the wall into this room. I call it the equipment room, the sump room, whatever you want to call it. And given that I'm running halides on that tank and on these frag tanks, I assumed I would need a chiller, but I didn't do a great job in thinking through the placement of this chiller, because the exhaust is coming right out into this equipment room and heating up these tanks even more than what the halides are doing in terms of heating up that water. So bad planning, but really, I don't know, I didn't have another option in terms of turning it around and having the exhaust go the other way, because that's I've got stairs underneath here and there's just not a lot of place to vent that hot air. So ideally the best thing that I could have done was to run, I guess, some ductwork from the chiller up on out to the utility window, but that probably would have been very expensive and I'm not sure I would have gone for that. So this is not the greatest design in terms of venting a chiller into this room, because this room does get a little hot and humid, especially in the summertime because it's enclosed. And the problem is, when that chiller is on, it really does heat up the room even more. Now this room stays relatively cool. I mean, on a really hot day here in Vermont, the temperature in here will get up to like 78, 79 degrees. I work down here and it's pretty manageable. Sometimes it can get pretty uncomfortable, but we don't have a lot of days where it gets like that hot. But what I have done to try to improve the situation in terms of not having a lot of heat generated by that chiller is to try to keep that chiller off. And as you can see, I've got a couple of fans on these frag tanks. Now one thing that I initially had done is change the light schedule on these halides for these frag tanks. So in the wintertime, these lights are on same time as the display tank lights, 1 p.m. to 9 p.m. But during the summertime, to try to manage the amount of heat coming out of these lights that heat up the water in the system, these lights come on at 10 o'clock a.m. and turn off at 6 o'clock p.m. So that's worked out pretty well in terms of kind of spreading out the light schedules for all the tanks, 3 tanks in the system. The fans have helped as well. So whenever the temperature gets down to, or whenever the temperature hits 78.9, these fans will turn on. And I actually added a second fan to this frag tank. I only had this one fan. And these are relatively cheap fans, maybe 30 or 40 bucks, and they crank out a lot of wind, which is great. If I was worried about aesthetics and the looks, I would have picked up some nicer fans like the ones from GHL. But I'll put a link to these utility fans in the video description below, and I'll also put a link to the GHL fans. But yeah, if you're not really worried about the look of your tank, and I'm not in this room, then these cheaper utility fans look great. But if you want something for your display tank, then I would recommend fans like the GHL fans. I didn't see a need to add those fans, the GHL type of fans, to my display tank. And these fans have worked really well in terms of evaporating the water and keeping things cool. So I started this tank, this 225 gallon Peninsula tank, in October of 2020. So this is the first summer I've had this tank, in this room. And I did not think I would, need a chiller for this tank since I'm running LEDs, so I did not put a chiller on it. But a couple of times the temperature in this tank recently got up to 84, 85 degrees, which was alarming. Usually if the temperature gets up to like 82 degrees, then I'm fine with it. But when it hits 84, 85 degrees, then I'm not so fine with it. Fortunately, all the corals, the frags that I have in here right now, were not impacted for those couple of days the temperature hit that high temperature. So I needed to do something, because what was going on is that even though I had these fans set up on these frag tanks, this chiller was kicking on. And when the chiller was kicking on, it was really, really adding to the heat into this room. So, when the high temperature hit like 78, 79 degrees in this room, you can feel a noticeable difference walking into this room. So I wouldn't be surprised if it got up to 86, 87 degrees in here when that chiller was on. And what was going on is it was heating up the water in the Dreambox sump here for the Peninsula tank. And even though I've got the LEDs on here, there is a little heat coming out of these LEDs. So overall, the tank was, it's just getting a little bit too warm. So I needed to figure out a solution to keep this tank temperature, below the 84, 85 degrees on these really, really hot days. So I considered two different options. One option was to have a portable AC unit in here, put it on the floor, and run the exhaust, out of this utility window. But, this, like I said, during the really, really hot days, this room got several degrees warmer than the main room out there. So I just didn't know whether or not keeping the really, really hot room cool was going to work if this room stayed at 78, 79 degrees, which is pretty warm, and heating up the water in this new tank, as well as this 187 gallon tank. So the other option I thought about was an in-wall portable, well, not portable, an in-wall AC unit. And as you can tell, that's the way I went. So the room down here, excluding the sump room, is 800 square feet. This is a 14,000 BTU unit. The windows are on the small side, so I was limited in terms of the size of the AC unit that I could put into the window. But the 14,000 BTUs is pretty much right on that rating for 800 square feet. Now, my plan was to keep that door open and to have the cool air from this room being cooled down by the AC unit go into that room. That's not ideal, obviously, because you've got more square footage and you've got a lot of hot air that's going to be kind of pushing its way out here. But when I installed this thing, and let me tell you, that was not, it's been a while since I've installed an AC unit in a window. That was a pain in the butt. But, after installing it during a super hot day and sweating my butt off, I turned the unit on and I set the temperature to 72. And so the room temperature in here went down from 79 degrees on that really hot day that I did the install down to 73, even with this door open. And fortunately, the chiller did not kick on. The fans were running. The fans, like I mentioned, I believe I mentioned, fans kick on at 78.9 degrees. The temperature in this tank stayed, the next day when it was warm out, it did not get above 81 degrees. And in this tank, with the chiller not kicking on, it was like 81 and change. So it seemed to work in terms of keeping this room cool and keeping both of the systems, cool enough. I know 81 degrees is not ideal in terms of a high temperature. I would prefer to keep a little bit lower. Over the years, you know, running, you know, the chiller in this tank, a lot of times this tank would be 81, 82 degrees, and I didn't really see an impact. So to be able to keep it at 81 degrees for both of these tanks, I don't see that being a problem. So in a nutshell, for me, these fans have certainly helped. I will also be adding a fan to this frag tank that will be plumbed into the 225-gallon tank. So fans have definitely helped me, but this AC window unit was a big help. And I think if you know, you have a hot room where your reef tank is in, even though you're running LEDs, certainly think about keeping the room cool with AC during these hot months. Well, that will do it for this video. If you liked it, please give it a thumbs up and hit that subscribe button if you haven't done so already. I also want to remind you about my premium SPS frag store on ReefBum.com. I will leave a link in the video description below. I'll also leave links for my equipment store. I do sell GHL, Royal Exclusiv, and Pax Bellum equipment, as well as Reef, Octopus, calcium, and Kalk reactors. Many of these products I do use personally on my tanks. Until next time, be safe and be well. Later.